All right, recording. Well, thanks for joining. Thanks for taking some quarantine time out to say hello.
Okay.
So the way I was hoping this whole thing to work was kind of like mini little podcast things, but because everyone's in isolation at the same time, kind of have this interactive element where if people happen to be free and interested at that specific time, and they can join in. But yeah, basically like a mini podcast, but anyone can like jump in and say anything if they want to get some extra clarification on anything. But I'm just gonna quickly mute everyone so the video doesn't keep flicking to them on the recording.
I think I found out you can pin Jared. So you can go right click on us and pin video.
Well, not necessarily
or
us.
What doesn't have to be us, you can choose whatever you want to do. Just in case he keeps flipping back.
Who says I want to pin you guys?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Go away.
Okay, I'll do a quick introduction to you guys. If nobody knows who these two are, Elle is an incredible singer-songwriter and musician, and Alex is... What's the order of things that you prefer to because it feels like there's many different things.
Start with dancer.
That's what I was going to say. Raver, number one.
Raver. Philanthropist. And then
animal carer.
Move on to box player. And then radio host, and then DJ.
Well, now you can add author into there.
Yeah.
So that's cool. And
into the top
X.
5.
Can you say X? I'm trying to think of what you would call label your candidacy gives you.
Failed political candidate.
Okay.
Yeah. You can go with there. That's part of it as well. Part of the resume.
Anyway, bit of a power couple sitting in front of your computer screens, everybody. So I thought it'd be really interesting to talk to both of you guys just about what's going on. And the whole purpose of this series is to talk to different people in different industries this month and to see, how's everyone coping? Does anyone have any interesting ideas or ways that they're changing their business or the way that they're doing things in response to that? Because I think we're all in a bit of a unknown limbo zone, and it's nice to hear from other people. And most of us don't know what's going on, what to do anyway, but that's still nice to hear because it lets us all know that we're just doing it together. So how has quarantine life been for you, and how long have you been isolating?
We got back to Australia from New Zealand. We were for a few days for a wedding at that time, just right at the point where things were tipping from concerning into serious, where they announced the mandatory 14-day quarantine for people coming to Australia on the Sunday night, and that we were due to fly in on Monday. So we did that, went into the 14 days, and it was remarkably, after the initial shock of like, right, this is a very different thing that society's going to have to deal with. After getting over that and being at home, the certainty of having to stay indoors for 2 weeks was actually rather helpful. When I was talking to my friends who were outside, they didn't know if they should go to the shops, and if they did, if there'd be produce there, should they still be working? Should they, cancel some things? Yeah, the fact that we were forced to stay inside whilst, challenging in its own regards had a positive way of, meaning that we didn't have that stress of wondering what we should or shouldn't do. No, we're indoors, and, that's what we're going to do for the next couple of weeks. And so, now it's been about 17 days since that happened, and we've been here.
Right, so you've actually completed the mandatory part of it. But you still
We're still here. Yeah, nothing much changed. I went for a walk to the post
how
office.
was that? How was that
It was
walk? Was
good.
your first walk?
It was interesting to see, like, at the bakery how there's a person in the line every 2 meters or so. Like, actually seeing that in real life, not just on the television, it's like, oh yeah, wow. Like, it's quite a strange thing. There's not that many people out and about, which is really good. Like, even then, like Alex was saying yesterday, like, do you want to go for a run? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I still feel
I was liking the indoors now. I've become very acclimatized to the comfortable surrounds.
I think there's just a comfort in knowing that I'm doing the right thing. Like, I'm doing, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, there's no discrepancy of, like, did I walk too close to that person, or, like, I don't know, like, running to, like, elderly people or people with small children and stuff. I'm just like, I don't know.
If you don't go outside, you can't make any mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
And being indoors for 2 weeks, it's suddenly, instead of protecting the world from you, once you realise, like, I've been here, we're okay, it's now like, all right, now the world's, we got to protect them from us. Like, there's this power switch between the two. So
I've totally felt that as well, because my friend has been dropping off supplies, and, you know, when she first came at the start of my quarantine, she was like, you know, do I need to be protected from you? And she came in a full mask, everything. And I was like, yeah, just be safe. But then she dropped something off to me yesterday, and I was like, you know, you're the risk now, because I've been fine for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I put the mask back on because I don't want it from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we did think about that. So,
have you found there's other positive things that have come from forcing yourself to come, like when you because you can look at it one way and say that was, like, really quite unfortunate timing. You slipped out of the country for like 2 or 3 days, and then that caused a 14-day isolation. So you could say it's unlucky, but I mean, for myself, there's actually been a lot of great things that has come out of being forced at home. So
this is the longest you've been home for 3 years or something.
Yeah,
it's
so
like,
true.
It took the government to keep him in his house.
That's so true. No more flying.
But that's what's been good, because I'm forced to. There's simply not allowed to go out and do things. So it already shuts down, like, it encloses the parameters of things I can do. Whereas that's probably, like, one of my biggest struggles is the possibilities seem endless all the time. And then you just get scatterbrained, you try to do too many things. And now it's like, well, there's a whole chunk of things I just can't do now. So it narrows my focus.
I was thinking it in the last couple of days, where it's like, even things like Zoom conferencing, sometimes I do like mentoring, lecturing at my old university, and it's like, I don't drive to the uni and get a park and then go in and, you know, if someone's late, this or that, like, it's just immediate. You can talk for longer because you don't have the added transport times. It's been kind of efficient as a creative, just like, you don't, you know, like, oh, let's go get a coffee and talk it out or whatever. It's just like, right here. Yesterday, like 3 calls in a row of different things, and it's just like, cool. You walk away being like, yeah, like, I've just talked for 4 hours, but I feel like I'm still sort of accomplishing similar things.
I think it's got rid of a lot of the faff around everything that we do. You just go straight to the point. You just turn on the video and you go. There's no waiting. There's no, like, there's like you said, you're not ordering coffees. So we're losing a bit of stuff there. But
something I've found is as well, because, and I'm sure you're all the same. There's so many things you can do in the world that you want to do as much as you can, and so people will ask you, hey, can you take photos of this? Can you do these sort of things? And you end up getting a bit of a backlog of people you haven't got back to, people you want to help out, but it's a bit too much to ask at this particular point. There's a lot of things, and with this virus coming in and just, you know, resetting everything, you find the stuff that you can say no to immediately. It's a bit of a weight off. I'm not sure if you find it a bit of a weight off your shoulders, where it's just like you're cleaning it, cleaning the back of your mind of a few chores, or like things you were feeling a bit bad about, because suddenly the one excuse that doesn't seem to be good enough all the time is just, I don't want to. And so, but having the coronavirus coming in and just stopping you from doing anything, it's suddenly a good excuse for everything. And I don't know, that's sort of a little thing I've been thinking, well, this is the first time I've verbalized it, mind you. So I'm sure I could in a few weeks articulate it a lot better and sound a lot less like.
No, I think that's perfect.
But
Perfect way to describe it.
I've found it's helping realize the things that are really important and necessary.
Because I think it's always such a blurry line with being like a freelance creative person. Like, so much stuff is coming in, you don't ever know what the right decision is. You want to do things sometimes, but that you think, it's like, it's okay. It's not like the best way to spend our time, but it's okay. And nothing else might come in. So you kind of leave it hanging and hope that something else better comes in. And then everything is just always up in the air all the time. And now I think there's a clearer line of being able to sort all that out and divide it. And that's amazing the way you put it, Alex. Like, I would imagine if we could just reply to emails like that. Someone emails you like a big request, and your reply just don't really want to.
Well, I'm sure everyone's I'm sure everyone's found themselves doing something out of a sense of obligation rather than a sense of, excitement, doing something. And so with this, it does remove obligation out of it. And you find, I've just found it quite an interesting internal dialogue I'm having with myself about the kind of things, that you...
Do you think that
at one point would have, felt important, done, and, maybe not necessarily been as totally into it. Now it's easy.
Do you think that'll carry on even once this is over? Do you think you'll...
I think sometimes you do take on too much. So it's like, it could be a cool... I'm the same though, but it's like, we can get to these points. Like last year, he's like running a political campaign, finishing up drafts of a book. Like, it was just, I'd just come back from LA doing an album. It's like 2 days together and then off to something else where you, like, it's, I did that, that.
Elle spent her birthday handing out how to vote for Alex Dyson. So it's,
I went for the pity, just like, look at what I'm doing. Please vote for him. This is my birthday. It's always like really fun. That's the thing. And like, if I look at our calendar and it's just like, it's sort of similar to yourself in some ways, where it's like, a thing here, a thing there. Like, I'm very grateful for the life that we've kind of put together. It's just, I guess, an opportunity to maybe take it to reset some stuff, like clear out your Dropbox folder or like your Google Drive, or go through all the like some invoices and get that all just tidied up.
Elle was just cancelling all her subscriptions to random things.
I don't need that. Like and if I want it, like I'll come back to it in 6 months. But just like trying to really just be like, okay, there's a couple things here where it's like, do I use this to its full potential? Or like, I've always wanted to start doing, Twitch streaming and make a game soundtrack. And I think there's an element of being a freelancer creative where it's like you pivot and you work out the variables available to you. And part of the last week, I think, has been trying to simultaneously pivot and try and find the best in the situation, the silver linings, and be like, okay, now I'm going to work in this method and like I'll veer the whole ship this way. But it's like, also it's okay to just take a break and like watch something, or just go to sleep, or I don't know. Like you just feel like you have to make the most of the time. And I think there's quite a few musicians I've been talking to that are just like, I don't feel that inspired to write, because it's like, what do you say? Is it our job to talk about this? Like, what's acceptable to write about? And it starts to mill around in your head. I mean, you can just write whatever you want to write, but I think everyone just overthinks it.
Well, as a performing musician, and you had a whole did you have a tour lined up?
Yeah,
we had
one for like, we had sort of it penciled in. So it's kind of, we were in a fortunate position where it's like, I was about to announce a bunch of things and like the album, and we were in the film clip stage of like it all being the location set and everything ready to go, and then sort of that's when it all stopped. But I have like the artwork and all the tracks done and ready to go, but it's just, I think at the beginning of that it was like, oh, let's wait 2 weeks, and now it's 6 months, and now it's like, let's just look at all of these variables and be like, we want to put an album out, how do we do that now? Because people are obviously still streaming and still getting through this with music. Like I'm still talking a lot to my community and stuff. Like
financially, has there been a big shock to the system for both of you?
Yeah, although before I get into mine, Elle told me a good tweet the other day from a musician who said, oh, my tours cancelled, so I did the numbers, and I actually made about $80 because touring is so expensive for musicians. Like this person looked at it and go, oh, it's saved me money. If I didn't go on this tour, I would have saved a bit of money. So yeah, but yeah, on my side of things, I've been running a pop-up bar design, that was running in conjunction with the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and we were about to launch another one. Both of them were going to have shows in it every night, so about 157 shows were going to take place in the 2 bars for the month of April, and it got cancelled about 12 days before, and so we paid all this money to get a bar installed, and we bought, which had, literally yesterday I saw the negative $5,000 alcohol bill because we'd pre-purchased all the alcohol, and yeah, it's like, we're not necessarily losing money rather than just not making any. And so eventually, hopefully, these investments will not be, complete wasted, and we're not going to throw everything in the bin as a result. Like there's certainly perishables. We've got 8 kilograms of coffee in our hallway,
if anyone
which
needs
I'm
coffee.
trying to grind up it takes too long.
He's been up till like 2 a.m. playing video games on some nights because of the coffee. Like I've never seen him up and out at 2 a.m.
I don't want it to go to waste, Jared. It's got to be done.
Well, maybe that's a business pivot. Alex's coffee delivery. I'm sure there's some need for that.
Yeah. Or just late night chats. Call me. I'll be awake. Just chat. Let's do it. But yeah, like that. We ran it last year and it was very successful, and like great. Was trying to run it again next year. So basically, I ran a cafe, which I'm not experienced in doing, Jared, for an entire year, for the sole purpose of getting back to the comedy festival. And so to have it, just a couple of weeks out from it happening, have it all fall over, it's like, whoa, it's a lot of time spent for something that, isn't necessarily happening. The other, but it's about looking at it. I was talking to my business partner and go, people can pay thousands of dollars to go to university and do a business degree, and we've just done it and we've lost a bit of money in the process. But if other people could do similar just by getting educated, and we learnt on the job and, other things to help us sleep at night. But yeah, it is a sort of tough one going into that. But we're in a reasonably fortunate position where, a lot of money comes from music streaming nowadays. And so that industry is only going to be,
part of my income is still there if I keep releasing music, which is cool. It just means I think everyone is doing that. Like I was just talking to a director, and it's sort of his skill set being in editing and getting like either sourced footage or animations and things like that, where it's like everything's sort of converting to digital, and what you can do, I don't know, do within that. So whether there's going to be a lot more albums up for streaming, a lot more B-sides released, or who knows, like,
I think it's an interesting shift. Yeah, I think with all, like, even, photographers and people that I know and musicians, I think this has made them all realize that maybe the business model that they have needs to diversify a little bit, and there needs to be more of a focus on passive income or because people still consume art everywhere, when they're at home, especially when they're at home.
Yeah.
So there should be ways to, make a living through that, and not always have to. Like, that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm exploring ways I can still work and still provide value to people. That doesn't require me to leave the front door.
Yeah.
Take a lot of photos of the inside of your house there, Jared.
Yeah.
How many different angles of the kitchen have you got?
I've moved these. We've done about 2 weeks of Zoom calls, and I've changed positions many times, just trying to.
I just changed this whole room around literally for Zoom, so that my plant would be in view rather than just the cupboard, and there's some boxes on top of the cupboard that I was like, oh, I don't want to see them.
Well, I think that's what the good thing about it is. Like,
you're showing them
anyway,
in your only recorded Zoom interview. Wow.
Right.
I think that's
like how the sausages are made here, Jared.
I think that's something good that's coming out of it. It's like, we're all, you're fixing up your rooms for Zoom calls, and you're doing it just for the Zoom call, but you actually have just created a nicer environment, like, for yourself anyway.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when my friends were planning to, this is a weird like diversion, but my friends were planning to stay over here once, and I really wanted to impress them. So I cleaned up the entire house, made everything really nice, and then they bailed at the last second. And then for a second I was like, oh, like, that sucks. And then I was like, did I make my entire house nicer and better to live in for nothing?
That's
Like, oh, wait,
it's like the
no,
climate change argument. It's like, oh no, like, did we clean up the earth and
exactly.
we made a better planet, and the scientists were wrong.
And it's kind of like what everyone's doing now with like focusing on their business and reevaluating everything. It's just like temporary annoyance right now, but actually everything you do now is such a benefit and advantage for you later on. Like, you're actually just improving everything.
Jared, the question is,
you're
guaranteed no visitors 14 days. What's the state of your house like, mate? How's it looking? Do we dare look to either side of you?
This side is fine.
That's a keyboard.
Okay. I will reveal what the other side looks like.
There's a swing. Swing chair.
Okay, look, that's not too bad. You've been alright.
Awesome. But I did. Yeah, it has been much worse, that side. But that's the good thing about Zoom. You just pick the frame. You pick exactly what people see.
Yeah.
I had a question for you, Alex, about, since you've had some experience in politics. Well, I mean, because I think from what I understand, from where you were coming from when you were running Warrnambool?
Running in, my hometown of Warrnambool falls within the seat of Wannon in the federal electorates of Wannon, and that goes from Colac in Victoria to the South Australian border and up to around Ararat, Stawell area and towards the fringes of Ballarat. So it's quite a big electorate down in Southwest Victoria,
And I'm sure this was part of it, and certainly from my perspective, this is what I assumed, was that the reason you're running is to offer up that youth voice, a progressive young voice that you don't see often in politics. If you look at if we saw a class photo of the politicians in Australia, I'm sure we'd see a very narrow demographic. So, and something that I find, and something that's really frustrating as a young person, is seeing like governments continually do silly things and make wrong decisions and do things that aren't to the benefit of most people, yet they keep getting voted in. And you just start wondering, like, what's it gonna take? Like, what's it gonna take for people to be so upset and fed up that an actual change happens? And I was thinking, is this a good thing? What's happening right now? Is this like a shake-up that like people need to like just everyone, like across the board, people are having to like reassess, things like how they feel about welfare and taking care of the environment and, looking out for each other and all these things. Like people are suddenly, like, for the first time, people, like, I can't remember what the number was, but when they announced the job seeker stimulus package, like for the first time, millions of people were having to consider lining up at Centrelink, and this is probably the first time they've ever had to thought about it in their lives. And maybe that makes people have a different perspective on what it means. Yeah. So, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think this will change anything? Like,
I don't think in and of itself will. Like, yeah, it was interesting even going on a random friend from back at home that I just happened to be friends with on Facebook shared a thing about, praising Scott Morrison. I got into being shared a lot of times, and I'd go into the comments and people just saying it'd be so tough for him. And and you get a thing out of your own, you obviously associate with lots of people who are similarly politically minded. And so every now and again you do stumble across this and you realize, politicians who I might not have a lot of in common with when it comes to policy wise or the way you go about things, do have a lot of support from various people for various reasons. And it showed that when, the polls and the pundits were all betting that Labor would come in and win the election, they didn't. And you might think any one of Donald Trump's blunders over the past 3.5 years would be the thing, when people thought that the inside Hollywood access tape from the bus of him talking about, sexually assaulting people, hypothetically, because it was a locker room, that might go the thing to change anything, but nothing in and of itself. And that's very rare that something like that has a big impact these days, because, I think politicians are realising that it doesn't need to be a whole lot of shame anymore. You can just deny the. Like, I just loved, well, I didn't love Steve, but I couldn't believe Barnaby Joyce's election victory speech, where he's going, it shows you people and you're greeting. I've got the support of the party, and he showed nothing over the previous 3 years to deem himself worthy of being in Parliament, let alone the Deputy Prime Minister, having an affair on his wife and 4 kids with a staffer who he's having a baby with, hundreds of thousands of fish dying in the rivers whilst being the Minister for Agriculture, and, the buyback of water to the tune of $80 million, which came through a department and from a company based in the Cayman Islands. There was very little of that to me that warranted him being voted in again, but it based on personality and a few different things, it happened. And so, I'm not sure that COVID-19 and everyone getting stuck indoors will change anything necessarily, but I do think that small things do add up to a larger thing. Like everyone thought after the handling of the bushfires, Scott Morrison absolutely dived into polls for when it came to preferred prime minister and those sort of things. Who knows what will happen during this? He could rise because it's a tough leadership, and Australia might come out of it better than other countries who are going through a pretty rough time at the moment. Does the fact that we had a 2-week head start in seeing a lot of things get worse, and we're able to bring in these policies a little bit earlier than other countries, mean that it was handled better? I don't know. I'm not one to say. But as far as my campaign goes, it was trying to make young people see that your vote is valuable and that voting is something that should be taken seriously. And that you should really cherish where you put that. And if you think that it should go to the coalition, the Liberal Party, that's good, but as long as it's because you've looked into everything and you found that is the best way to do it. So I don't know, Jared. I don't know where this is going to lead, because as we've seen, like, things can change so quickly. Over the last 3 to 4 weeks have felt like a year, and so maybe in a year's time, the Liberal Party will put Peter Dutton in Australia. I don't know. It's very hard to tell at this point. But hopefully.
I just hope, like, I'm hoping that it does have more of an impact, more of a shift, because this feels different. It's not somebody, just doing something outrageous and people forgiving it. This is something that's affecting like everybody personally, and I think that's different. It's not something you can just be like, oh, that's just somebody being weird.
I did think it was interesting how when everyone started to go on to New Start payments, it was like, it's too low to live off, and then everyone's like, oh yeah, maybe we should bump it up, and it's like maybe changes like that where it's like a lot of, I don't know.
No, I think you're actually.
I don't know.
I agree with you, but I don't think that the politicians have any shame and will start saying they were wrong originally and now
I'm
you
not
start
saying that they should change.
No, I'm saying that people won't understand you.
Yeah.
I'm saying that people won't understand that the current people in power have totally shifted their thinking because they've realised that their entire, trickle down economic system, is not the best, and we can bail out these multi-billion-dollar companies and various things.
Well, I guess what I'm hoping for is more of a shift coming from the people, and the way that and then that obviously hopefully runs on, because I think just from a personal perspective, this is the first time I have had to go to the Centrelink website and just see what's up. This is the first time I ever and then that's made me understand what a process it is for people that need to do that often. First time I've experienced a loss of freedom and not being able to travel places, which has never been an issue, and then now not being able to leave my front door, and then there's no direct comparisons you can make, but I think in general and even the people on the cruise ships. And I've seen quotes saying, "Oh, we're being treated like refugees." Does that make you think a little bit now, a little deeper into how you feel about that?
I'm not sure people make those connections broadly, where it's because when we were watching the announcement the other day on the TV, and there's almost like a sort of socialism, everyone gets the same, whether you're on New Start or whether you're this or that, the job keeper type of thing, whereas it's just having a universal amount allocation or income for people. It's but that would make everyone stay inside, and it's I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm articulating.
I think
properly.
I agree with both you and Al as to it should make a change in the future, but I think politicians have no shame and will just say we did the best job and we're the best and vote for us because we're the best. They're never going to admit where they fall down, and they're never going to admit when the Liberal Party were very successful in opposition under Tony Abbott's leadership and talking about Labor's debt and deficit disaster when the world went through the global financial crisis, and the Rudd government at the time followed the advice and hit hard, hit early, and hit households. And I don't know if people remember, in Australia, you got the $700 stimulus and it kept our economy afloat. We didn't go into recession like a lot of countries did. We seemed to be very well buffeted by the time. But at the time, the Liberal Party said, we're in this much debt. It's an absolute disaster. We need to get back to surplus. But the same party and the same people at the end of this will come out and say, well, it was an unprecedented emergency. We've given $130 billion for New Start, and we helped Australians through, and you can trust us. And I take the pessimistic view that people will buy it. When it comes to vote again, they go, oh, they got us through. We go, hang on, what about that debt that you used to say was really bad to have? And they're like, oh, well, when we put Australia in debt, then it's okay. It needed to be put in debt then. And it's like, no, they're gonna lie to us when it comes to time. Well, they're gonna act like they are the best and the other team are the worst, and there's no nuance in the conversation. It's literally, and I've got a feeling that because it's such a surface level thing, and politics isn't too sexy to investigate the actual policies. I'm not sure if it will be the big change that we hope that it will.
But you can't just be pessimistic, because the whole campaign last year, what made me really inspired of Alex running was I viewed myself as someone who was very separate from politicians, you know, like it's like you see them on the TV making choices you wouldn't make, or I don't know, you feel kind of somewhat separated. Whereas like Alex is just like also my boyfriend, but also like someone I knew that was putting himself on the line, and people were like, what are your policies? Like just treating him with, you know, questioning him about like what he stood for and what he could bring to the community. And it's like, these are all everyday people. And hopefully, I think in any disaster, there's heroes that come forth from the community and innovators that come forth that say, hey, this isn't good enough. Or like, we have to treat our teachers better, or people in medicine, or it's like, these are the people who are heroes. And I don't know, like there has to be good that comes out of it. But maybe it's not necessarily changing political parties, because people don't necessarily want that to change in the midst of all this other change.
I do want more independents to run next election, Jared. So are you in a run in Perth?
There might be a few too many naked photos of me floating around for that to be a scandal-free.
That's good. They're out there already,
campaign.
So they're not going to be brought out.
It's very public already.
In the future.
You know where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when I was studying political and legal studies in year 11, I did heavily research into what the criteria was just to get your name on the ballot, because I thought that would be a really funny thing to be able to vote for myself. So I was planning it back in the day. I was like, how many people do I need to register? I was like, how many people do I know? This could be possible.
Yeah,
Well,
I was in LA and Alex was like, I'm going to do it. My friend's driving me around Warrnambool to people's houses so they can sign my form. And then he did a DJ set, and one of the guys took his form and went around the club and got everyone to sign it.
Because if anyone is curious, what you do need is a $2,000 deposit. You need to fill in the form, and you need 100 signatures from people in the electorate and their address, and they need to be, you know, registered voters in the electorate that you're running for as your endorsement. And so that's all you need to get your name on the ballot. And then they literally get a bingo cage. They put the amount of balls in of candidates, and they roll it around and pick them out, and that's the order that you get on the actual electoral forms. So
very technological.
It's all very interesting. I mean, they haven't yet come up with the time. There's still bingo balls, but that's all you need.
Toss.
If you get 4% of the vote, you get your $2,000 deposit back. So that's what you got to aim to do.
That's all you need to do. I wanted to ask you about this because we haven't really talked about it yet, but we talked very briefly about your involvement with FEET.
Yeah, that's awesome. You got involved too.
Yeah, well, I've invested with them, and but I want to like take it further. So to explain to everybody, maybe I'll let you explain, Elle, because it's I think with traveling musicians and traveling photographers, where it's our job to travel and fly around the world, trying to reconcile that with things like climate change and being a responsible citizen. They're kind of on different ends of each other, you know. So it's hard for people in those industries to, you know, it's a little bit hard for me to try and send out any kind of message about being serious about climate change and reducing your carbon footprint when I myself have a massive carbon footprint from all the travel. So I saw a video of you. You were a part of this organization called FEET, and that seemed really interesting. Do you want to tell everybody what that is?
So FEET was made by some musicians, Heidi from Cloud Control, up in Sydney. I saw it through, I think Vance Joy and Jack River were part of the initial announcement, and it was essentially a solar farm where I think it's old agricultural land that couldn't be used anymore, and so they were building a solar farm out on there, and musicians and creatives and now anyone can invest in it, and it's sort of a carbon footprint offset, but like Yeah, is that the best way to explain it? Like it's
Heidi was in a similar situation to you, Jared, where she was flying around a lot and thinking, what I'm going to do. But the idea that she had was such a can-do attitude. All right, how do we change this in the system? Because you and I and Al and all musicians and artists and travelers can preach from our balconies on Instagram and say, hey everyone, take care of the environment or whatever. But as far as actually getting your hands dirty, she read up on investments. She talked to people and got this investment fund, which is investing about 60% in this solar farm, a specific solar farm, and about 40% in other ethical things. And so you invest your money and you've got an estimated rate of return because the solar farm will produce energy. People will purchase the energy. They'll pay the solar farm for that energy. And then depending on how much you've invested, you reap the profits from that. So it's sort of using capitalism against itself to help steer the ship in a direction of renewable energy. And helping people who, creators are creative because that's what they enjoy doing, and the world needs them, but they're at the mercy of people who read the rule books when it comes to accounting and negative gearing, and who write things about superannuation and investment funds and all the the tax incentives and breaks and offshore accounts that everything's done. So she's knuckled down and got this ethical thing that you can invest in, you make money, you help the environment. It's a pretty remarkable achievement to be able to put something like that together. And I think
I just saw it and I was like,
really
that's
impressed.
That's super impressive and something that I can do right now, and be a part. Like I saw it and it was like, I want this to work so badly because it's such a great idea, and it's a very small group of people making it initially happen. So I just thought it was a great initiative, and
I think
as well. So
I think it's just a very smart way to put your money where your values are. In a smart way that is actually good for yourself in the long run financially. And I think that's the other good part of it I talked to Heidi about, is it's encouraging creative people and artists and musicians to think more in depth about where they put their money and investing, and like smart ways to use their money. And I think it's just and see the argument always is that when you start talking about the environment, somebody says, well, do you own a car? Like, yes, because that's all that's where the technology is. I can't, like, there's no alternative. Like, and like, do you have a phone? I'm like, yes, like everybody has all these things because that's what we need. That's what's available to us to do, I think. And I think only way that this stuff changes is when money moves it. So to be able to like put our money, we make our money from doing all this stuff, and then we start putting that towards things like renewable energy, then that starts shifting, then that becomes more affordable, and then eventually the shift happens. So I think it's a great way to so if there's any other, I think there's definitely a few photographers and traveling performers. I think Matt Tarrant in the guest list, who also needs to travel a lot to perform. It's just part of what we do, but I think this is a good way of looking at it. And if anyone wants to look that up, somebody said in chat, please link the company. I'm just going to type it, and you can
I know
Google
when
that.
I first found out about it, and sort of, it's like anyone can do it. Like, and also it's not just like in the music world, it's not just the Vance Joy, Jack River. Like, it's if you're just starting out and you're flying a bit and you want, or you just believe in the project, like it's truly open to anybody. Which I wanted to make known on my Instagram when I initially posted it, and I was really excited to see you reach out to Heidi as well, because it's like there are so many people that rely on international travel, or production teams, and there's a lot of people behind the scenes that are all in the same boat.
Well, we might wrap it up soon, but I'll just open up. If anyone has anything they want to ask, then throw it in the chat, or so something like that. Just chuck it in there, and while we've got this power couple for a couple extra minutes. Alex, is there anything is there anything particularly different you're doing right now in light of this situation, like work-wise or like creating? Like, has it forced you to?
Applying for a few grants. That's a little bit different. I beg your pardon. The live streaming side of performing has been something that I haven't done too much before. I did have a radio commentary of the football with Declan Byrne, who is the host of Home and Host on Triple J. We live stream our voices broadcasting over the AFL matches. But looking into how we can make a living on industries that have been super affected by this. You know, these comedy clubs that I was opening are based on live performance and hospitality, both of which have crumbled in the last little while. So figuring out how to connect with people, which is a lot of creative people do. Connect with people where, you know, human contact is banned. You know, this is a great idea, and we'll get to hang out and have a little discussion and see how everyone is feeling about the whole situation. Like, doing that in a digital realm has been interesting to think about, when your traditional ways of doing it are now it's against the law. So it's that's been an interesting way to wrap your head around over the last couple of weeks.
Do you find what's your thoughts on, one last question from me, what are your thoughts on musicians live streaming, and I don't know, I'm not sure if I have like any particular thoughts on this, but I just thought it was kind of ironic, I don't know if that's the right word, that musicians are always, and artists are always at the forefront of helping people through a crisis. Every performer, every creative I knew contributed something to the bushfire crisis. They played benefit concerts or they donated things.
Yeah.
Now everybody's live streaming, providing their music for free. People turn to the arts to help them get through things. Artists are always the ones that are left out of everything else, government related, stimulus related. And then it's awesome, but it's also like, it just makes me sad when seeing like all musicians starting to live stream from the bedrooms. I love watching it, but I'm just thinking, man, it's so unfair that
doing it for free again.
Exactly. You're the hardest hit. You're the first hit. And then now you're helping console everybody else while they're still playing for free.
I've definitely seen a lot more people talking about that, at least in the last couple of days. I know Kira Peru, she said on Twitter, like, I just want to talk about it. I don't have a standpoint, but we're offering our services for free, and when we're all out of this and we announce shows, does that mean people have been seeing us for the past, because there's an element of you save performing for an album cycle or a release cycle to sort of hopefully get all your community in one place at one point, rather than playing a show every month in a city kind of thing. So it's like having those type of discussions is important. And I know there's a group of managers and people who are sort of talking about rather than everyone inventing their own hashtag and their own live stream and live festival, like, can we talk about how it all affects us, and maybe a group strategy moving forward for a lot of Australian artists anyway.
Unionise.
Yeah, unionise in a way. But I think there's a nice thing about seeing one of your favorite artists at home in their trackies saying, "Please stay at home, I am." And I'll play you one of your favorite songs stripped back. Like, that's a really special thing. And it's not that we don't want that to happen, because that's one of the really great functions about Instagram Live or live on YouTube or live streaming on Twitch. There is a lot of it happening at the moment. And as you said, like, arts is important and so often not not as considered, I think, in the budget outline, where it's like, if art has no place, then don't watch Netflix and don't listen to your favorite albums on Spotify. And yeah, like, just what are you going to do at home at the moment? Like, it's extremely important. And and those live feeds don't take the place of touring income, or, you know, like all the things that we were doing before. So yeah, I don't think there's a wrong or right way. It's just everyone at the moment, I think, is processing it the best that they can and wanting to reach out to their community.
And people who aren't artists, who have lost their jobs and income, are now, you know, being supported hopefully in a similar way. You know, artists who are sole traders or have their company can do it that way. And I think it shows everyone has some real basic needs, and everyone, you know, particularly all these artists are giving their time and energy for free, because now that has been, you know, to a large extent in this country, met for a lot of people, even if it's frustrating and it's been, you know, a bit of a battle to get to. It seems like there are some ways that people can survive, and it makes it a lot less stressful when it comes to monetizing the output rather than just doing a really nice thing, which artists have been synonymous to, as you mentioned, with every disaster that comes through and whatever.
Definitely. I just saw that in the chat from Dale, the leveler, I think it's interesting. So he said, could it be considered a bit of a leveler for more independent artists to reach a larger audience? My uncle's actually saying he works over at Microsoft in Seattle, and they're doing like lots of different group things, and obviously just talking about how they restructured certain stuff. And they said that there was a town meeting where normally the attendance would never get above 1,000, and they held it online in like a big group community hall kind of thing through Google or something, and 10,000 people turned up. And that's like, they were all like, whoa, like that's amazing. The community was really amazed, because it's like everyone's here and wants input on what's going on. And similarly, I feel that this with even something like Spotify, I get my yearly wrap up, and it's like however many countries I've listened to your music, it would have been this many millions of hours, blah, blah, blah. So I have never been to Denmark. I've never been to the UK, but there's people there listening to what I make from my room in Melbourne. So like with technology, of course, like you could reach more people and all around the world, and especially if you offer like good digital content.
Yeah, I like the idea. We've talked about it a little bit over the past couple of days. I like this idea of it being a leveler, and the idea that the like more you had going on, or like the bigger the festivals you were playing, the more you have had to lose from this as well. So if you are an independent artist just starting up, you probably haven't really been affected too badly, because there probably wasn't like a great number of people coming to the shows anyway. So in that sense, you know, like smaller artists have lost less, I think, when everything gets shut down, and maybe that's an opportunity to kind of rise up the cracks a little bit, and
they're not stuck with massive mansion mortgage repayments as well. So the stress doesn't quite there either.
We've hit now, so I just want one last thing to write us out, Alex, because I haven't actually talked to you about this, but I would love to know about your new book and when it's coming out and what it's about. And is there a competition?
You don't have to go get it, but yeah, it's something that I started writing when I left Triple J. Yeah, I did creative writing at uni, and I thought it'd be cool to write a book one day. And so I sort of started when I left Triple J and traveled overseas, and I started writing about a kid who had a song go viral. And I was thinking about these people who, oh, there it is. Well, who, I got to meet at Triple J, like interviewing Lorde on her first trip to Australia. And she was playing a show to 50 people, but her song was going really well on Triple J. And there's just these really young, switched on people. And then she gets a phone call at a house party in New Zealand, and Splendour in the Grass says, "Hey, Frank Ocean's dropped out. Can you come and headline the last night?" or something like that. And just thinking about, yeah, even with Billie Eilish these days, how a young person who has to deal with growing up and going to school and everything, but also cope with getting interviewed by two random radio presenters in the morning. So I started writing a novel about that, and yeah, it took a long time. It's hard to do, I've found, because, well, I'm not very good at it, for one, but you just got to slog, and occasionally you can hit a real good patch. But yeah, I found, particularly coming from a live radio background, and you jump on air, you talk, you have a bit of banter. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it falls flat, but it's done, and then you move on to the next show. You've got a new one, and then the same the next day, and the same the next day. But with writing a novel, and whether it's doing a movie or a film or doing an album, yeah, it's the first time that you do so much work in the back end and make it ready, and then suddenly it's out, and then you've got to move on to the next one. So yeah, I found that a really interesting process, and it's really cool to see it in the flesh now. But yeah, I don't know if people feel like reading something whilst they're locked up in their houses. I mean, feel free to grab yourself a copy.
But it's not out for a while, right?
Yeah, it comes out of 1st of May, so like it's a month. But you can pre-order it, and apparently that's good if you want to get on the bestseller list. So I'm happy to have a bestseller if anyone wants to help me do that. But it's a cool process, and it's sort of, because they're based about a 16-year-old, you sort of write advice to your younger self, like you write the things you've learned, and the 16-year-old in the book finds the stuff out that you've learned as it goes through. So yeah, it's quite cool to do. But then of course then they go, all right, so what's your next one? I'm like, oh man, I've just finished my first. But anyway, it's called When It Drops, and yeah, that's it. Have
awesome.
You got a book?
Well, actually, like one day, that is, and I'll call you when that day comes, and because I'm just quite interested in the process as well, in how does it even happen? Like, who are the people you need to call, and who are the people that need to be on board with it to even make it happen? Can you do it without anyone liking it at all anyway? Like, all these questions I have.
You can independently publish, but if you do want to pitch to publishers, what I found, depending on what the book is, particularly novel, apparently a good way to do is write 10 to 15,000 words, like about 5 chapters, the first 5 chapters, and then you give an outline of what happens for the rest of the book, like the chapters beyond that. Chapter 10, this happens in a paragraph. Chapter 11, this happens in a paragraph, and you sort of sum it up, and that's a good pitch document to give to publishers, and they like that sort of packaging of your idea, like an example of how chapters work for a while, and then it gives them a taste of what will go in the future, and then they find out what happens in the future. So if anyone's considering it, yeah, that's would be my advice of starting off.
Would you be considering like a photo book, or more of like a writing?
I've got a couple ideas, but yeah, not fiction. But there's a talk that whenever I have to give a public talk somewhere or a workshop, the most well received one is when I just go through a bunch of images that I've taken throughout 10 years and tell the story behind them. And a lot of these photos and experiences have like a quite funny, or they've had an important life lesson attached to it. So the talk I normally give is life lessons through photography, and run through 20 photos and just the story behind it. And some stories are just like nice, and they've taught me something about creativity or something like that. Other ones are just like quite silly and quite funny. So that was that idea I've been thinking about. So like kind of like a photo book, but you're not really reading it to learn about photography. You're reading it just to hear about some experiences. But I probably need a few more like silly stories.
Yeah, I'm sure you just in the last month. Just like,
well, that's
how many shows was it in 1 month?
That's true.
The day the world shut down.
That can be one chapter. Touring around the world during a pandemic. That's a good chapter.
I felt for
yeah,
you.
I mean, but that's why that's also something, like whenever I get asked my like favorite quote or like life motto, it's always bad decisions make good stories.
That's good.
And I think that's a good way you know, because whenever something comes up where there's a safe option or there's an option that could go really bad, but it's probably going to be funny if it goes bad, I'm like, let's just do
only if you
It's
acknowledge
more
it was a bad decision later on. If someone's telling me a story and they're like, yeah, it was the best, and I'm like, that's horrible, that's a terrible decision. That's not quite as good. So as long as you learn from the bad decisions, you're absolutely right.
But like, no matter what, if you always take the most interesting option, you'll always have a story out of it.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear a story where everything is perfect and everything has gone right and nothing's gone wrong.
I repeat that to myself when I'm like lugging gear around, like, and like the wheels have fallen off my keyboard case and now it's just a awful coffin that I'm dragging.
Yeah, the only problem with that is that you're right in that, like, the stories are better when you're single. Like, in a relationship, sure, you have love and affection and everything, but the stories aren't quite as fun.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, just you don't make as many bad decisions when you're in a relationship.
Oh, you have two brains.
With someone, you know, extremely lovely.
I mean, sort of. We did our first Africa trip last year, and we bought like the tiniest thing of sunscreen, no hairbrush.
That didn't affect me as much.
That didn't affect you. But it was just like there's a bunch of things where it's like we didn't think about being there until we were in a shipping container airport in Botswana. Did you go? You went to Botswana recently?
Oh, that was part of this tour, and that was the only place out of about 7 airports where they did a temperature check and health check on us. Didn't get one in Germany, UK, India, Singapore, only Botswana. So they take it seriously. Anyway, I will let you guys go. You've been on here for ages. Thank you very much for sharing some stories and some insights.
Thank you very much for having us, and thanks for watching this conversation. It's really great. Hello.
Thanks, guys.
That's okay.
I just unmuted everyone. Hopefully it doesn't go crazy.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And the link of for Alex's book is in the chat. So make sure you click on that before I end the meeting because it will disappear.
Save the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought someone was taking a photo. Wait, I'm going to take a screenshot. Are you ready, everybody?
No.
You have to, okay, wait, someone's coming. All right. Be photo ready in 3, 2, 1. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody.
I'm sad that the cat didn't come back into shot, Michael. I did notice that. It was almost a BBC World News moment there, my man.
Michael, your camera is amazing.
Yeah, you need
to you're putting us to shame.
He gets compliments about this every day.
It's very, very
he's attached his 7D.
Yeah. So I've got a full frame camera attached to it with a 50mm lens, and I've got a lighting set up.
Oh my gosh! Wow.